It's finally here. The RNC is in Cleveland. Think of it as Comic-Con in bad three-piece suits. There's heroes like the human Pence, Super Sabato Jr., Captain Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Dr. Strange, a.k.a. Ben Carson, and, of course, the incredible Trump who made a rare appearance last night to introduce She Trump. We'll talk about all this and more. Trump vs. Hillary starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hey, everybody. I'm your moderator here for Trump versus Hillary, Christian Bladt, at Christian DMZ. A little bit about me. For 8 years, I produced and co-hosted Dennis Miller's nationally syndicated radio show. I have my own podcast, The Blackcast, and I'm part of AfterBuzz Godfather Kevin Undergaro's The Tomorrow Show. But let me introduce the panelists. I'll start to my left, your right if you're watching on YouTube. Chelsea, I hope your last name is pronounced Galicia, but...
Galicia, yeah.
Okay, good, because I was like, oh, make sure you ask her how to pronounce her last name. And
Before
then I didn't.
we go on, and here we
and
are.
at Chelsea Galicia on Twitter. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a lawyer. I call myself recently retired because I'm trying to hang up the lawyer hat and move into nonprofit work that I find much more fulfilling. But man, have I become a political aficionado in the last couple of years since becoming involved in a campaign back in 2014. I've gotten super political and went to D.C. this spring and participated in Democracy Spring, participated in the sit-ins, got arrested, got my street cred. Very proud of that. More proud of that than perhaps my bar license. So I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to engage in this conversation and hopefully engage more people in the political process.
Yeah, absolutely. I, of course, have never been arrested, so I don't care enough about anything. Good for you. Then next to you, Scott Moore at SMan80.
That is me. Yeah, and I'm feeling less smart being next to you, and also I've never been arrested, so now I feel like I'm feeling
not everybody
really.
can be that cool.
I don't know.
Yeah. Not everybody's
not.
Chelsea. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I've done a lot of shows here in AfterBuzz, and for me personally, been very interested in politics since a young age. And since the year 2000, I got to vote for Gore in Florida, so that was exciting. That was my first presidential election.
Was it a butterfly ballot?
I was gonna say I think I voted for him. I don't know.
You intended to,
maybe
but you
voted
might
for
have voted
Buchanan
for,
instead.
Exactly.
I don't
Buchanan.
know. But I've been a very big supporter. I'm openly gay, and so for me, being out here, I help run the Equality California. We had a little area in West Hollywood that we worked on, and for Prop 8 and Human Rights Campaign, all the way through from 2006 to the last couple of years. So for me, politics is very personal, and it's important for me to get out there and hopefully get people energized to vote.
Absolutely. Well, it's very important to vote, and as we'll find as in the months ahead.
Absolutely.
And way down at the other end of the desk, so far away.
So far down.
Drexel Heard, at Drexel Heard. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, AfterBuzzers. Right now, I am the moderator of the only other political show on all of our networks right now.
Our softball teams will have to play each other in the spring.
The Black Hollywood Live's Political Culture. I currently sit on the North Hollywood Council, so I'm actively involved in our community.
I know you mentioned when we thought we might have done this show earlier. You were like, "Well, I got a council meeting."
I do, yeah. Thursday night, the big night. I got a council meeting, but I'm going to run and I'm going to make it here. I've been involved in politics for years. We were just having a conversation at the beginning of the show. I used to be the executive director of College Republicans, but I am no longer. I have seen the light. Since then, all of my Republican college friends, they're always like, "What happened?"
We had that in common, actually.
We do, right?
Way back to the 90s.
And all my Democratic friends are all like, "Oh, remember this? Remember when you used to talk about this?"
Nobody's going to let you live that
They're
down.
never going to let me live that down. Actively involved in politics. Actually, recently ran for a district delegate for Hillary Clinton earlier this year. But I'm very excited about this election and having this conversation with everybody. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, welcome, panel, and that we've given you everybody's Twitter, but also the show has a Twitter at TrumpHillary16. Follow us there. You can like us on YouTube and make sure to comment and rate us on iTunes. And to speak personally from the heart about how excited I am. My parents impressed on me the values that you work hard for, what you want in life. that your word is your bond, and you do what you say, and
Thank you,
keep your
Melania.
promise, that you treat people with respect. That's from my heart. That didn't come from anywhere else. Anyway, we're going to break down the first night of the convention. I need to apologize to everyone here on the panel because, as I said in an email over the weekend, I figured it would be fine to start on Tuesday because nothing really happens the first night. So my mistake. We probably would have been well served to do a show last night.
I mean, I think that you just did a very beautiful summary of
Yeah.
last
Did.
night.
Yeah, that was
Right.
kind of all we
Apparently
needed.
that's all that happened last
But
night.
we got to fill the time, so we'll talk about more of it. So the first thing I guess to talk about is before the convention actually started last week, Trump announced his nominee, Mike Pence, and there's been some talk about the logo looking a little phallic, but then also TP. There have been some great memes of Beavis and Butthead, TP from my bunghole, and all this stuff. So, anytime that you can get a ridiculous meme with a 90s cartoon character, that's good. I'm going to go first, and I think of all the people that you heard that Trump might pick, Mike Pence is a good choice because for most Republicans, he seems normal, and Trump is a little bit out there for even a lot of Republicans, but they're like, oh, Mike Pence, he's the kind of guy we usually vote for. Chris Christie is not that, but we'll sort of go from the opposite end of the table down. What did you think of the choice of Mike Pence?
I thought Mike Pence was a fine choice.
Yeah.
I thought he was the perfect choice for Republicans. We talk a lot about what the embodiment of a person who represents a party is. And I think Mike Pence, for what it's worth, for everything that happened in Indiana, the religious freedom bill,
Sure.
from his stance on immigration, he really embodies where the Republican Party is right now. Donald Trump might not represent that, so Mike Pence brings what Donald Trump could not. For all the bluster that Donald Trump is, that's why Chris Christie was not a good choice for him.
No, it was sort of having just a pun intended bigger version of Trump.
Trump.
Yeah, it's not
Yes.
really, and it's also it's a state that borders the one that Trump comes from. You're not really bringing anything else to the table.
And Mike
if you're
Pence
Chris
also
Christie.
doesn't overshadow, like he's not exciting like Donald Trump, so he's never going to outshine Donald Trump on anything. To the point where I don't even think he's going to be a good attack dog on Hillary Clinton or whoever her vice
the
president
vice
nominee
president
is. It's
is,
just
yeah.
going to be so snooze, as we saw the Republican convention last night until the end. But I mean, it really is a snooze fest with Mike
Yeah.
Pence, and he's just a safe, boring
Everything
choice.
is a snooze fest until you watch that 60 Minutes interview and you saw the two of them
That's true.
try to painfully get on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah, it was definitely awkward, and I would have to say I agree with you, and I agree with both of you that was the safe choice. I don't think that was the choice he necessarily
Not at all.
wanted to
No,
take.
and if you believe what you hear, even
Right,
after he
even
made
after
the pick, he wanted to back
wanted
out
back
of it.
But
yeah.
I agree. I think that was what he needed to bounce him out. But it's kind of the opposite dynamic this season because you're not going to have the attack dog. The attack dog is going to be Trump himself, and the vice president's now going to have to be the more mature, policy-driven. He's the guy that has the experience. He's got all the years of experience before governor. He does bring to the table what Trump lacks, and I think Newt would have been another crazy choice and would have been too far out for most people. The drawbacks to him are, I think that he's going to be easily painted by the Democrats as being anti-LGBT.
Sure.
I also think he doesn't have a lot of name recognition, and he also comes from a state that doesn't help Trump at all either to expand his battleground
Right,
because
yeah.
he comes from a safely Republican state for the most part. So on that side, he doesn't bring a lot to the table. But yes, he was definitely the safe choice. Out of those 3 or 4 candidates they could have picked, he was definitely the right choice.
And if you watch the 60 Minutes interview, Donald Trump was asked point blank, why did you pick Mike Pence? Because he doesn't bring anything to the table. And his stance was, or his response was, because of party unity. For Donald Trump, it's never about what somebody can bring that he can't bring. It's, this is just the person that they told me to pick.
Right, basically. He basically said that when he was sort of doing that
Right.
horrible
Yeah, it's
announcement.
just,
of
vice
him.
presidential pick.
I saw something on
so awkward.
on Jake Tapper's show on CNN today, and it was some of the music that the artists have gotten upset with Trump for using. And when they sort of had that press conference with Mike Pence, the Rolling Stones, "You Can't Always Get What You Want" was the song. So clearly there's somebody that was just like, all right, this is a little something for you, Donald. Chelsea, your thoughts on Mike Pence?
I didn't know very much about him before.
Like most of
Right,
America,
saying,
sure.
right.
But as I read who he is and what he stands for, it made the ticket even scarier for me.
Okay.
So I think Democrats are probably excited about it because anybody who is, I think a moderate Democrat would certainly be afraid of somebody like Mike Pence. I mean, certainly the fear was a thing that came up for me. Right. So I think it's a great choice from the perspective of the Democrats.
Right. Well, that's one of the keys to this election is fear. You know, who's more scared and what are you scared of? And we've seen some of that in the convention, as we'll kind of talk about. So that was the Trump-Pence logo. I do want to look at one more logo before we start talking about some of the speakers. The GOP convention logo has an elephant on a guitar because, as you guys know, there's a song, Cleveland Rocks. And Cleveland is, for whatever reason, the home of rock and roll and the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So there's probably nothing that really speaks to, you know, millennials and younger voters than an elephant on a guitar. So I think that it was really well chosen. I think, you know, maybe for the, 1960 Republican convention, that would have been crazy. But, it's all right. You know, it's not really about the logo, except for whoever buys the T-shirts. So anyway, on night one, we had a whole variety of speakers. The first that, at least the first that they showed on TV, Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty, and his point was, Trump will have your back. I'm going to ask my panel, starting with you, Chelsea, do you feel that Donald Trump has your back?
I mean, to stab it, if I didn't give him what he wanted, and he'll see me like little Mexican, bring me something, or call my mother a rapist.
I mean, he probably calls them all Pedro. I don't know. I'm just assuming, he probably, just has one name that he uses. But sure. Yeah. Okay. Scott, do you feel like Donald Trump has your back?
No.
Specifically, any reason why? I mean, you've mentioned a little bit about your background. That does not seem like something that he.
I mean, you're a white male.
Right.
Okay,
that's
true.
That's
great point.
One thing that maybe, but besides that,
can you still register? I mean, can you still vote in Florida? Or are you registered in California now?
No, I'm registered in California. Unfortunately,
so he's not interested. There was a chance for a second.
I'm not going to be able to help him at all.
All right, so no, he's not interested in you.
No.
Drexel, Donald Trump has your back.
I don't think that that Donald Trump likes black people.
But the blacks love him.
The blacks love him.
He'll do tremendous with the blacks.
Millions of blacks love him.
There is not a chance that Donald Trump has the back of the American people. There's just, and I say that as a whole. The middle class, the women, LGBT, Hispanics, middle class white people. He just does not have the backs of pretty much anybody.
So basically, Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty, he has his back.
He has his back.
Probably Scott Baio.
When they're out shooting ducks. That's probably the only time that he has Willie Robinson's back.
I'm just sorry, I got a visual now of Trump duck hunting with the guys from Duck Dynasty.
Who do you think would be worse, though, Dick Cheney or Donald Trump right behind you?
I would probably take Donald Trump just because of his track record. Cheney literally shot his best friend in the face. So
not funny.
Scott Baio, speaking of whom, he introduced the theme for the night, which was Making America Safe. He also had a few points. The surprising one was that he said Donald Trump is not the Messiah. I do not think his speech was vetted by the Trump campaign because I don't understand why they would have let him say that. He also said being American doesn't mean getting free stuff. And I say that specifically because, Chelsea, I know that you were very vocal supporter for Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And that seems to be sort of the go-to line for opponents of Bernie, especially on the right. So when you hear that, what is your reaction when they say that?
I'm going to take away his kids' free public education, his free roads, his free police, his free fire departments, his free, the road crews who maintain everything that's free that he uses.
Tax loopholes is
I'm going to take that.
Charles in charge residuals.
Right. We'll take all that away and see how he feels about all this free stuff. Bernie never called it free. The money is coming from somewhere. Money is coming. We're taking it back from, the corporate interests that have taken it all. So it wasn't free, but it's a good cheap line to use, and anybody with
Right,
a
and I
little
mean,
bit of
it's the red
intellect
meat.
can
It's
As
see
you
the
say,
red
to be
meat,
fair, these both conventions
Right.
are filled with cheap lines.
course.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Scott, your thoughts on the idea of the theme, which we'll talk about how they kind of got away from the themes, but the Making America Safe. Was it good to start with that for the first night, considering who the audience is?
Right. I do think that was their intention was good, but as we've seen, I'm getting ahead of myself the second night, but we've seen so far they haven't really stuck very close to their themes.
Right.
So I don't think they even stayed anywhere near it. They didn't have anything
Except for Rudy Giuliani, who we'll talk about.
Even
in a
then,
minute.
though, it was still not as much as they could have done with that theme. They could have done so much more, because that's what the Republican Party was, and they were known for, is protecting from terrorism and keeping America safe, and didn't see any of that last night.
I do think that I know that there are people on the panel that might find it hard to believe that there are people who are passionately planning on voting for Trump. Those that I know that are, it has a lot to do with that issue. It's kind of it's their main issue, and they're like, well, everything else doesn't matter because if we're not safe, and they don't think that they'll be safe with Hillary. It is sort of something that you would have expected them to really beat that drum, because it's such an important issue, and obviously to conservatives, likely Republican voters, you should have heard more about it, and that was surprising. Are you surprised, Drexel, that we didn't hear more about it, except, of course, for the soon-to-be-mentioned Rudy Giuliani?
Not at all, mainly because Republicans can't really talk about safety. Barack Obama, for what it is, has, over the past 8 years, kept America safe from the outside world. What he hasn't been able to keep us safe from is from the inside.
American-born
terrorism. And anybody, and at this point, anybody can talk about police brutality. At that point, it's very hard to feel safe from the inside. And that's not something the Republicans are talking about. They can never say to the American people that Barack Obama kept them safe, because they know that Democrats stole that from them.
Right.
This president stole that from wherever you stand on his drone program, wherever you stand on that. Barack Obama is in the center right when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to how he retaliates against somebody. Hillary Clinton, for the most part, is to the left of Barack Obama. Some people can argue
I was gonna
that
say she's pretty hawkish.
She's pretty hawkish.
Sure.
I think, but I think when Barack Obama pulls he has proven that he is the center-right candidate when it comes to foreign policy and that. So I think Republicans are having a hard time reconciling that fact with themselves, is that Barack Obama can keep them a little bit safer than Republicans have over the past 10 years, or the past the Republican administration. So.
Right. I mean, we've heard the point the past couple nights that we aren't safe under President Obama. They sort of allude to it, but as
they have no substance for that.
As my former boss Dennis Miller used to say, Barack Obama is a killing machine. He had the drones out there, and
drones out last night.
Exactly.
Right.
He's out there joking around with Seth Meyers at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. At that moment, Osama bin Laden is being taken down, and he's smiling and laughing. Probably went out for a smoke, even though I know he says he quit. He's just having the time of his life, and while he's thinking about it, he's like, I know it's So I think he's a little bit more cold-blooded than people give him credit for, and I mean that actually in a good way, because when you're president, you do need that to some extent. You certainly need to be able to take out someone like Osama bin Laden.
And
I don't feel like I'm
difficult decisions.
Those
like
difficult
that.
decisions.
Right.
I don't feel like I'm really going out on a limb there. That Osama bin Laden should be killed. Obviously you can break down like, well, then what do they do with the drones? But I think it was interesting that it wasn't the issue that they really focused on.
I was really fascinated how the whole safety thing could have been harped on so much better if they wanted to play it well. And they spent so much of the time talking about Benghazi, which is was a military operation on the other side of the world that most Americans feel like was a tragic story.
Yeah.
But don't feel like that makes them less
it didn't
safe
personally
here.
affect them here, and that's the connection. Although that was, and I thought it was horrible the way they brought, and I know it's on both sides and it happens, but the way they brought the mother out in that speech, I thought was just for political gain, was just really. It was gross. I just didn't like it.
And the problem with
dirty.
the Benghazi story has always been from the beginning. When President Bush was in office, there were double the embassy attacks. So how can you feel more safe under George W. Bush and less safe under Barack Obama.
I don't know. It's the same party where Jeb Bush said, "My brother kept us
Right,
safe."
but I mean, I'm just talking about this Republican psyche has this idea that they are less safe somehow, and maybe this has a lot to do with race relations in the country. For the most part, maybe, this white minority is feeling less safe because they are fearful of what's happening around them. That has nothing to do with feeling safe
from terrorism.
It's the
Those
fearful
terrorists we
it's a
had
fearful
are
change.
homegrown. They have been white, actually, like the Charleston shooter,
Exactly.
Dylan Roof, things of that nature.
I mean, Trump
have
came
all
out.
been American-born, American citizens. Yes, there's been something like the Boston Marathon bombers were refugees at some, but most of the, I mean, if you look at the numbers, we're not being killed by terrorists. We're just not, we're foreign.
They're
Mexicans.
homegrown. They're homegrown.
Yeah, and so
exactly.
Just a little bit looking at the numbers would hopefully set people straight. But no, they're really good at driving this point home about terrorists abroad are so scary they're going to come attack us. They were so good about it on every night of the year except last night, when it would have been their good time for them to hone in on that very well. And I thought they
because
blew it.
I mean, the point that they do have, and it's hard to really disagree with the fact that you do have a party, the Democratic Party, doesn't like to say things like radical Islamic terror. Such a big deal
It's
is
all
made whenever it comes up.
semantics.
Yeah, and it's like, well, this is someone who was radicalized trying to impress ISIS, so they weren't actually part of it. It's like, all right, but in the case of the Orlando shooting, he's on the 911 tape, and you can hear what he says. So it's like, all right, so maybe he didn't have his ISIS membership card, but this is why he did it, and it's a problem.
I'm still pretty
But the
convinced that it was,
FBI
I don't know.
it was
The
a gay
FBI
thing.
yeah.
No,
Well,
the
that's
FBI
excuse.
came out.
Yeah,
The
to use
FBI
that.
came out with a report just yesterday or 2 days ago that said that it had nothing that they believe. From
Right.
all the facts all the evidence that they've come up with is that they believe that it had nothing to do with the gays in that club.
Well, I thought it was about that he felt he had been used by a gay man or gay men, and so that was the place that he took his
No, I'm
revenge
saying
of.
that's what the FBI said, that there was no evidence,
there was no
that he
evidence.
attacked that club because of.
But I also don't think there's evidence that it was. Now it's become an excuse that anyone can say, "Oh, I'm doing this for ISIS or
Right,
whatever,"
sure.
and that's to
Right.
me also an excuse that he could say that, but he wasn't affiliated. There's no proof that he was affiliated with any of them.
But even if you
any of those
discount that
groups.
example, there are instances where they're like, the Fort Hood shooting. It's like, well, that's workplace violence. So I mean, you could go through the list, and it doesn't matter which ones are and which ones aren't. It is an issue that I think Republicans can be strong on if they choose to be, but they didn't choose to be because they did talk about Benghazi. And go ahead.
I was just going to say they try. There was one line that I believe Rudy Giuliani kept talking about was Hillary Clinton's for open borders, and so maybe on an immigration issue, maybe that could have been their rallying point of the night, and they did not know how to do that well either.
And thanks for reminding me, the part about Giuliani saying, ISIS has told us that they're going to infiltrate their people into the Syrian refugees, and Hillary wants to let them come over.
Right.
First of all, does anybody believe that ISIS, we're just going to let all of them in? And then this drives me bananas that we went into the Middle East, destabilized the whole thing. Then we're shocked that people are refugees, and then we're like, we don't want to deal with any of you. And then we wonder why so many people in the world dislike us, because we won't help anybody because we might let in a bad apple.
Do you remember that scene in Lion
mess.
King when the stampede was coming over the top of the? I feel like Republicans think that that's what refugees and immigrants are going to do to the. They're just going to come over and they're just going to like topple over. Just come in. They're just going to come in. No open borders. Hillary Clinton's going to let them all in. Barack Obama's been letting them in.
Exactly.
And there's a big stampede in the Pride
And so when he
Lands.
said open board, I'm like, does anybody believe this? And then I was like, oh,
Well,
yes.
absolutely,
yes.
of course
Absolutely.
people do. Yeah, because they wouldn't be talking about it if they
No,
didn't
and
know
you think
that
about the
people believed in
European
it.
Union. I mean, that it is open, and you see the struggles there and what's going on, and so people are scared about that thing. Oh, well, they're going to do that
Except
here
we're
too.
not really surrounded.
Of course, they haven't
by
been
any
watching
other
the
We're
last
surrounded by water. We're fortunate.
4, 8 years, 7 years of the Obama presidency, where he's been deporting more people than Republicans have in the modern,
Not something to be proud of, but
No.
Right, I'm
But
just
it's
saying, like,
true.
if there's anybody that's been following the policy, the American policy on immigration, it's been Barack Obama. So that right there, I mean, just that right there alone, that whole night
can be undone.
Right, it just didn't make any sense.
Well, they didn't take advantage, like we were saying. They did not take advantage of what the night was about, and they didn't use that to their
Because
full
I think if they would have gone to like really what's scary and looked at the cause of that, they would have had to look in the mirror and be like, oh,
Exactly.
we caused this as much as we want to point fingers at Hillary and Obama.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they could look at that, and they could also, I don't know, this sounds like such a crazy thing for a political convention, but they could try and offer solutions to the problem instead of figuring out who to blame.
Who would have thought?
But obviously, this week isn't
Don't
about
waste our
that.
time with
Next
that.
week isn't about that either. There's no one offering solutions.
No.
We could circle back on this for the whole show, so I'll move on. Specifically, Rudy Giuliani, who did give, let's just say, a very fiery presentation. Charles
Was he
Cranham,
on something? Is that a fair question?
I don't know
mean
what
to
he's
be
on,
disrespectful, but
no, but I think he was just excited to be in front of some cameras again. Charles Cranhammer, very conservative, outspoken Fox News correspondent, said, quote, he was worried that Giuliani's head would explode. And if you watch it, there is kind of a moment where you see, he was getting really worked up and like, I feel like the part where it was supposed to say, parentheses, yell, somebody probably should have put parentheses, stop yelling, and he just kept going, and he was really worked up. But, it was, look, I understand what he's trying to do, which that's probably one of the biggest, more chumming the waters with red meat out of the entire night. I don't know if he accomplished it. Basically, like, we need to be safe again. Donald Trump's going to keep us safer. Do you feel, Drexel, like he was really the best person to make that point? I understand why they thought he was, but in hindsight, maybe he didn't make that clear.
I don't think that I think that everybody sees Rudy Giuliani as obviously America's mayor just from that, just from New York at 9/11, just in general. Did Rudy Giuliani keep New York safe? I think there's an argument that anybody could make at that point. And I think that Donald Trump probably would have had a better chance of putting some Republican general out there.
Sure.
Somebody who has experience, even though Donald Trump only listens to himself on foreign policy. I think that, they could have had an opportunity to put somebody out there who understood what it meant to keep America safe, to drive that message home in terms of policy, but I don't think they want.
Because I think the good message you can get out of Rudy Giuliani as someone who grew up in New York is, you can just have sort of time-lapse photography, Times Square 1993, Times Square 1998, just that right there. It's like, well, you could actually, people didn't bring their families to New York, and if they did, they didn't decide like, oh, well, let's go walk around Times Square. That was the last place you would go. So, how he went about it, you can certainly, debate those things. Where did the homeless people go during that point? Right. We all had those kind of debates, but there is an issue. That is an issue, sort of, inner city, not even inner city, but just sort of, revitalization. Making our cities safer.
Well, maybe. That's the whole stop and frisk program that Giuliani brought up, created, and he feels that those type of programs are what keeps America safe.
Right, and I think he's speaking to a room full of people who are probably inclined to agree. But
except the studies show that the broken windows theory that he was trying to implement does not actually work.
It doesn't work, exactly.
Go ahead, Scott.
No, but I was going to say quickly on that, I do think that for who he had to speak on that, he was the perfect choice. First of all, they're both from New York.
That's a good point.
He represented America at that time period, 2001. That was his city, and so I think he was the perfect choice for that. However, I think his speech, he was so energized that I was worried. I thought he was going to collapse when I watched it. I really did. It was bizarre. Like you were almost saying he was on something. It was maybe I was like, did he take a shot of adrenaline and he was tired? Like it was weird because he was so over the top and so,
especially in comparison to the energy that we felt from the floor.
From the whole floor itself. So it was disjointed a little bit, but I think he was the perfect choice for what Trump had for that particular speech.
Yeah,
sure.
And obviously he also spoke about Benghazi, which is a very important issue to some people. And what I wanted to point out, and I'll let you speak in a second, Chelsea, that for anybody who says there's no media bias, PBS cut away as soon as he mentioned Benghazi, talked to a couple people for about 3-4 minutes, and went right back to Rudy Giuliani. So I'm happy to point that out when whichever network does it. If any of you guys see anything like that, please let us know. But it was like they basically slid his audio down before he got to the Z in Benghazi.
But up until the Giuliani point, the Republican convention had been talking about Benghazi for almost an hour at that point. So cutting away from Giuliani was not about Benghazi because they had stayed on Benghazi for an hour at that point. So talking about it more just would have beat a dead horse. So PBS was like, oh, they're still talking about it. We can move on to something else.
Right. What was your point, Chelsea?
My favorite part, if I could say a favorite part to the speech, was when Giuliani was saying that whenever he needed something for New York, he went to Trump, and Trump would support and I assume give money without recognition, without wanting to be named, and how Giuliani was running the risk of getting himself in trouble with Trump for outing Trump as the hero that he is. I looked around.
He was the Batman, Gotham.
He's Bruce Wayne.
I mean, I would love to see that on his tax returns, his charitable contributions to the city of New York.
Well, we're not going to see the tax returns,
but
you will never know.
But I mean, what a perfect thing to say. He is so good, and you would never know. Now, like, people say that about Oprah because she does give a lot of money sort of under the table, but she also gives a lot of money that is visible. So
yeah, I've never seen Donald Trump give a car to everyone in a studio audience. I've seen Oprah do that.
So it's just very convenient that it's like he is so humble. He didn't want you to know.
And by the way, if he
saved
really
the city of
didn't
New York.
want you to know, and Rudy Giuliani went on national TV and said it, he's a dick. But anyway, if he really doesn't want you to know, don't tell people. Like he'll get, he'll get elected on his own. So that was a very disingenuous moment. Because maybe at the time he didn't want people to know, but it's probably like, you go ahead and let people know now, though.
That for me right there? Like, is anybody buying that sentence and anything preceded it and anything that follows it? I don't think any of it can be believable. I mean, when you below your credibility like
it just depends on what you walk into it wanting to believe.
Right, absolutely.
And
that's true.
The big moment in the first night was the unexpected, except everybody covering it knew it was going to happen. But the fact that Trump was actually there on Monday night, he actually took the stage. We have the visual of it. We're not going to hear it, but we're just going to see him come out. He sort of walked out in a smoky entrance. And
silhouette.
To give credit where credit is due, comedy writer Alan Spencer on Twitter pointed out that it's exactly the way that Captain Kirk enters in Star Trek 2. And I tried to find it online. I was going to do a side-by-side thing, but then I realized, what am I doing with my time? But
it's also the exact same way that Beyonce starts her concert, her tour this year.
I mean, it looked.
I saw that concert.
Very specifically, it looks like the open to the old Arsenio Hall show, not the more recent one. But yeah, he's just standing there. He's ready to come out, and he's like,
and he came out to.
And by the way, he's applauding himself.
Right.
Let's not discount that. But yes,
he came out to a Queen song.
Yes,
What on what planet do any of those people in that convention agree with anything that Queen had
fat
to say?
bottom girls? I would think that there are probably a few people who agree with fat bottom girls. But anyway, so he makes this big entrance, this grand entrance, and it is surprising, and it's that's the moment when you hear that Trump is there. You're like, hey, this campaign might be a little unconventional. Just a hint. But, so Melania Trump, God bless her. I know that in the after fact, she kind of said that, oh, yeah, she wrote it. Nobody really blames her for her speech plagiarizing Michelle Obama. Whoever actually wrote it, I don't know. There should have been somebody in that room that goes like, sounds kind of familiar. Where did I hear it?
I knew something was going to be good when I heard her and Trump's interview with Matt Lauer. Yeah. And she said, Matt Lauer asked her, are you practicing your speech? Oh, I'm just going to review it one time.
Yeah.
It's from the heart.
I wrote it myself. And you can see the wheels. Like, she doesn't want to be an outright liar. So she drops a line saying, I got a little bit of help. And I knew from there something was up. Well, and I'll ask you guys your thoughts on that. So, obviously taking from Michelle Obama's speech,
was sort of unfortunate because she's someone that you can, at that convention paint as someone that maybe you don't want to be like as First Lady. But the real travesty, the real outrage was she also in her speech said he's never going to give you up, never going to let us down, adding, by the way, that he's never going to run around and desert you, never going to make you cry, never going to say goodbye, never tell a lie and hurt you. Now, how great would it have been, by the way, if that moment, it was all revealed that this was just the most elaborate Rickroll in history.
Yes.
Trump didn't want to run for president.
Right.
It was all setting us up for that moment where her speech, I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. But Rick Astley, nowhere to be seen, but you can hear him. You guys don't have the headphones on, but our listeners and our viewers can hear it right now. So, obviously, whoever wrote that speech, a lot of Red Bull, maybe a couple of macchiatos or something, and just whatever came into their head, they just regurgitated through the keyboard. Scott, what do you think about putting poor Melania Trump, who, spoiler alert, English is not her first language.
I think it's like her fourth language.
Yeah, exactly. God bless her.
It's not even
yeah.
her second language.
So, and you give her something that she's going to have to be held accountable for that, maybe you didn't give 110%.
Well, it kind of like we were saying, it's this whole thing is we were kind of talking about this. Does Trump even really want to run for president? And then you see something like this happen, you're like, who would ever let this happen?
Yeah.
I mean, not even just another former Republican first lady like Nancy Reagan or something, but you're taking Michelle Obama and it's verbatim. And
yeah, it's not like
just
Lady
a couple
Bird Johnson
words.
or Jackie Kennedy. It's the one that we all know right now.
It's the one that everyone they keep talking about how much they can't stand the Obamas, and here they are, and it's verbatim, word for word. Word for word. So, and then the whole aftermath of it too, and trying to deny it, and it's just that's weird too.
That's what made it an issue. In the next morning, this morning, to have just been like, we don't know how that happened. We fired the person responsible. You don't have to tell us who it is.
Right.
You don't have to actually fire someone. Just say you did.
Just say you did.
And then they were talking about it into the afternoon. It's like, I don't think that's what you should have been talking about. I mean, I'm not really invested in anybody succeeding at this point, but you feel like if they were trying to run the campaign, for a campaign that obviously has mostly been run fairly well because, despite what Trump does to self-sabotage, he's done really well up until this point. This is not the point where I think anybody, maybe even including Donald Trump, thought that he would be at right now.
No. And I thought it was actually, that was the problem, is that this was the night for her to shine.
Yeah.
This was the first night. This was, a speech that, Ann Romney's speech 4 years ago was really well done. And it was a shame that was taken away for them because it was awful. And that's all people are going to be talking. I'm talking about for them.
No,
I'm not saying for me because I don't support, but I'm saying for them that was the night for them to shine.
You can put yourself in their shoes where you realize
taken away.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to do.
And it was completely taken away.
Wow, you are a much more compassionate person because for some reason I don't feel bad for them.
No, I'm not saying I feel bad for them. I'm saying it's a shame that was the night that they were set to showcase her and showcase and give a great speech about him.
Yeah.
And that was overshadowed. Is what I'm saying. Like when you go back 4 years ago to Ann Romney, you see other speeches of political opponents in the past.
If the Donald really wanted to let her shine, he wouldn't have been there to show her up.
It's all about him.
Drexel, you don't even have to speak specifically on that, but your thoughts on the first night before we dive into the second night, just sort of as you think back on some of the things we've already talked about.
I thought the first night was overall a snooze fest. I mean, it I tweeted during the convention last night and said at Donald Trump, and I said, "Is this the convention that you wanted? Like, is this what you expected it to be? Not from a showman standpoint. Everything that we know about Donald Trump, he's big and blustering. He loves his show, and he's got a successful show on NBC. And it was the most. The Romneys are pretty boring. If you can outbore the Romneys, you're doing something's not right. And I think that they could have at least come out with on night one and made it a thing. I think they tried, and I think the speaker lineup just did not lend itself to that.
Well, night two kicked off with UFC President Dana White, and he said that Trump's good for business because that was the theme of night two. I mean, it's not even specifically about his speech, which, you know, I'm sure, like we were talking about, he probably looked at it maybe for a couple minutes before, and he's like, great. He did seem to have a personal connection that, you know, Trump supported the UFC when it was not something that was viewed very favorably. So look, you know, I mean, he's declared.
So did Maria Menounos.
Hey, that's absolutely, that's a great observation. So where's the Trump Menounos ticket? Don't answer that. But, you know, I think that that's the sort of thing that you want to get out there is like, he's good for business. Let me tell you how he's good for my business. And I don't know how much we got that because it was a lot of Hillary Clinton's bad for business, but let me tell you all these other things she's bad about. It was a very unfocused evening. You know, from Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson was talking about, like, you know, Arkansans know that we don't need Hillary. They also know that they don't need Mike Huckabee, but you know, and just sort of trying to make these points that were sort of off the message that they went for, but I don't even know if anybody cares. But it's just interesting. What did you think, Scott, as, you know, night 2 kicked off?
Well, again, I think it was what you're saying and what we were talking about earlier is they have not stuck to their themes at all these first 2 nights. And as you were saying, it's like if you look it up, it's all Clinton, Hillary, 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 nothing about Donald Trump. Even if you were going to be talking about your candidate, you're not talking about anything really positive about him or what he's going to be doing for the country. It was all attack Hillary, nothing really about work. The other optics that I find interesting these first 2 nights are, we were saying this earlier, is the crowd is very low energy. Yeah. You see these primetime speakers at 10 o'clock at night Eastern time, and half the seats are empty. You don't have any of the heavyweights of the GOP. No former presidents that are alive. You have Bob Dole, who's like 93. You don't even have the governor of Ohio. I mean, obviously he ran for president, but
so did a lot of the other people who were speaking.
But you see no unity there, and that's his, you know, that's his home state, and he's not even there. He hasn't been seen yet. So there's a lot of weirdness about this convention that just feels very off these first 2 nights and very, very different from what I've seen in previous Republican conventions.
You know, once they sort of, you know, overlooked the roll call portion and Trump was the nominee, you feel like there were people there that were hoping for, you know, like standing up and, you know, endorsing Ted Cruz or maybe even Marco Rubio or whatever. And then once it wasn't going to happen, it's like, all right, well, there's a Chili's across the street. Let's just go watch from there, you know? I mean,
very, very subdued and kind of very different from what I've seen in the past. And, like, it didn't seem like the enthusiasm is there for their candidate.
Seemed like a lot of the same of the first night, a lot of talking without saying anything.
Right. Although to an extent that is politics, but I know what you're saying. Like this was exceptional.
Exactly.
Yeah, this was a lot more than that. Someone who was very there was a lot of substance to what he said. I knew I was going to say that word wrong, so I rephrased it. NRA lobbyist Chris Cox, which, you know, I don't know who he is, but he was the designated fearmonger for the evening because his job was to go out there and make sure that everyone listening knew that Hillary wanted to take away your guns. And I mean, obviously, that is a very important issue to people, especially if they're scared. And as you know, the Making America Safe Again comes in.
That people know that you were being sarcastic about people knowing that that's what Hillary wants to
well, this is what he says. He
Thank you for
Chris
that
Cox says,
because I'm no Hillary fan, but I do want to make sure that people know her position
according
on that.
to Chris Cox, you need to know. So
no, but I do think people are legitimately scared of that, though. I do think people
do
think Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are going to try to take away their guns, and that he's been trying to do this, and he's still going to try to do this. People are legitimately scared that they're going to take away the guns.
All the things that Obama's supposed to do, he doesn't have a lot of time left. So he should really get a move on it.
But there are people that really do legitimately think that, you know, Democrats stay in power, that the guns are going to be taken away.
But then I have also heard that there are a lot of people in the NRA members that do want reasonable gun control.
90% of Americans
and that it's only the leadership that's really like, we're not going to give an inch because somebody will take a mile.
Exactly. As soon as you do, then
of course, it was also the leadership who wanted to curb the open carry laws in Ohio for this convention against
Isn't
the people.
Right. Yeah. When it's convenient for them. Yeah, that was fascinating when they were trying to do that.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of. So what that comes down to, I think, is that there is a fundamental issue that yes, there was an assault weapons ban and there's talk about reinstating it. The legitimate real fear that people have is you reinstate that, then what's next? You know, it's an argument that people make that, once they banned smoking in restaurants, everybody's like, oh, that's fine, no problem, because smoking, yeah, that's really bad. And then it's like, okay, well, you also can't have the trans fats and, oh, let's try and have this movement that you can only have a soda this big. And these are, obviously all extreme examples that people will point to. Well, once you banned smoking, you started doing all these other things.
But you don't have a Second Amendment right to soda.
Right.
So, I do. I actually have a dispensation, but yeah, everybody else does not. Yeah. But it's sort of the point is that, and that there's an actual phrase was, Hillary doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. I think that was from the first night. And that's what the real fear is, so that it's like, there's all this talk about comprehensive, gun legislation, which obviously there are plenty of Republicans who feel that way, but the real fear people have is that it won't stop there.
Right.
And so it's very easy to say, like, well, she's for gun control. Well, we know what that means, and then it sort of spirals downhill at that point. What we also got in night 2 was another appearance by Donald Trump. So by the time he comes on Thursday, even the people in that room will be tired of him. It was just a video this time.
Yes.
But he made sure that we knew that he's going to win. A lot of talk about law and order. I was a big Jerry Orbach fan. I assume that's what he was talking about. And then there was sort of a moment that was very quickly overlooked where there were 10 freshman senators all took the stage. And it's sort of the reminder of like, oh yeah, this is what it's all about. People who really want to keep their job, and this is the guy at the top of the ticket. So they're going to be, the down ticket are like, I don't care who's up there. I don't care if I agree with him. Sure, we're all here, but that guy has to speak, and everybody else will just stand there and smile. Let's talk about Paul Ryan, who we were talking before we got started. There were some very vocal boos, which there also were for Mitch McConnell, whose comments we overlooked entirely because there wasn't much to them.
Except the line about
the Clintons
Hillary
coming to Kentucky.
came to campaign against me and I'm here to return the favor. Are we 12?
Right.
In some ways, yes.
Politics,
I
you
think
are
when it comes
12
down to
when you're in
politics, it definitely comes
Yes.
down to middle school playground
But I can't believe
mentality.
he said that out loud at the convention.
Exactly. Yeah, well,
I'm not surprised.
maybe that's why he got booed, because they knew that was coming. But I'll start with Drexel. Your thoughts of Paul Ryan sort of coming up there and being like, "Hey, remember me? This is when these conventions were a little bit more normal, and we'll try and get back to that." But
I think Paul Ryan was a perfect person for this night of the theme. If we're getting back to like the theme, he talked about poverty, and he talked about, I think, I wrote down that they said that the word work was used 10 times in the 3 hours of the convention, and I feel like Paul Ryan used that word, like he was the only person that used that word 10 times. So I think Paul Ryan was Paul Ryan. He was fine. He gave a great speech at the 2012 convention. It was a Paul Ryan-esque speech. He is the Speaker of the House, and whether or not you agree with Paul Ryan on the issues, he is the only one on the Republican side that is trying to make certain things work. So I give Paul Ryan an A-.
you were so close to give him a plus, but he'll take it.
An A- for bringing it back to normal. Just even for the 20 minutes that he was on stage giving a speech, I think that it made it a normal Republican convention for a second.
The only thing that I could think about is that selfie he took with all of the interns and
the day before.
There was one black person in the left-hand corner, and then there was an Asian somewhere in the middle there. Like, I remember seeing a couple of
That means it was very diverse.
It was very diverse.
And so when he's talking about poverty and all these, it's like,
it doesn't
who
ring
are you
true.
trying to kid?
It doesn't ring true. But I do agree with you. I think he was the only one that has brought anything of attempt to bring policy up from anybody, and that was the only thing I could give him somewhat of credit for. But I still thought his speech overall was a little weak. So
you're not giving him an A minus?
I'm giving him an A- on convention as a whole.
As a convention speech.
Right, as a convention
I mean, compared to everyone else out there so far.
We only have a few more minutes. Speaking of grades, Tiffany Trump, Trump's youngest daughter, whom you really didn't see about a year ago, maybe even 6 months ago, she talked about Trump, her father, the Donald. He would leave comments on her report cards every year. This is something that she said. What she didn't mention, sadly, is that they all said, be more like Ivanka. And that's not fair. I don't think he should have said that to her. By the way, Ivanka was there. They had a shot of her in the crowd. She had a look on her face which was, wait, who's this? I don't know. I don't know who is Tiffany Trump.
I only remember that interview from when Tiffany was born.
Yeah.
And they asked Trump, what characteristics did she get from you? And he said something like, "Let's hope she gets her mother's boobs," or something like that. It was some.
Is that great hair? Tiffany has great hair.
It was a reference
She does, actually.
When she was a baby, he was like, "Oh, let's hope that she gets her." Then that's the only.
Why does he always have to say creepy things about his daughters?
That was the
you don't
only
need to
thing
do
that
that.
I could think of when I see the poor girl.
So another, and we'll ask everybody about this. Another Trump child spoke, Donald Trump Jr., who started off by saying he was the son of a great man, which I guess that means he's adopted. Now, watching him speak, I actually thought he was great. He was a very good presence on the stage. I was wondering if a lot of Republicans saw Donald Trump Jr. on the stage, listened to what he had to say, and thought, in November, can I just scroll like Junior next to the name? Will that count? I don't know. I'll ask you first, Chelsea, your thoughts on Donald Trump Jr.
Well, the only image that I have of him before the convention is an Oprah show that he did back when we still had the Oprah show. And even then, he seemed a little creepy. The only thing that all the kids could say about their dad was he instilled in them a great work ethic. But that was really it. And then the other thing that I think of is him next to like a dead animal on a safari, because there have been many.
Yeah.
Right.
So I he's not somebody that I relate to or that I put much credibility, faith
But in
into.
in context of the people in that room, sort of being a spokesman for his dad, I think it was helpful to have his family there.
And I was really surprised at CNN's reaction. There were a lot of commentators in CNN. They were like, "Oh my God, so impressive! He may run for office." I'm like, really, one speech that somebody else probably wrote. He, said it well, and all of a sudden he's qualified for office.
Well, that's where we are at this point in time. Where the bar set so low.
We are. These days.
Yes, exactly. But I was going to say, I would give him an A if we're giving grades for reading a prompter, because I actually thought he did read it very well.
It's not as easy as some people think.
No, it's really not, because I've definitely done that, and it isn't. So that's what I'm saying. I do think he read it well. But it's his kid, so of course you're going to expect the kids to say nice things about their parents for the you
hope,
but
for the most part.
The elevator to the middle class, the education,
that's an old 80s
that
term.
is something he really has ever thought about.
No, I mean that's just an old kind of conservative term that he threw out there that somebody put in the speech. But
so
it
again,
was fine.
disingenuous.
No, it was fine for what it was as a speech, but did it do anything as a huge mover and shaker type thing for anything for Donald? No, not at all. Not really. It didn't move the needle at all for anything.
The final speaker that we'll speak about from night 2, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Drexel, because I know from beforehand that you had some thoughts on Ben Carson, who brought his energy, and he whipped the crowd into narcolepsy, as he usually does. He said that Hillary trained under Saul Alinsky and Lucifer, which... I know for the religious right that sounds like a bad thing, but say what you will about Lucifer, he gets results, and he has not declared bankruptcy 8 times, like some people we won't name it. Your thoughts on Ben Carson, what he had to say, Drexel?
Well, I just wanted to make a point real quick about Donald J. Trump.
Sure,
he said something real quick. One of the things I wrote down that he said, we didn't learn from MBAs. We learned from people who got a doctorate in common sense, as if education... or having an education is like the worst thing that Republicans
says
can
the guy
learn.
who went to Wharton Business
School.
Exactly.
So it's
and he specifically named Wharton as
and he
academic.
They flashed on the screen that he actually went there later, and I was like, what was that about?
And he just, I mean, that's the whole Republican mantra is making education like the worst thing.
Exactly, that's
political correctness as the worst thing ever. Ben Carson, Dr. Carson, there was a thing that he said earlier in the day about how he was on Obama's short list at some point for Surgeon General. That President Obama had asked him to be Surgeon General at some point. Ben Carson's very smart. He had the most energy I think we've seen in this entire primary up there.
In his public life.
I'm just glad that he found his way to the stage properly. He didn't bump into anybody.
He was standing awkwardly back there while they called his name.
He wasn't like this and rocking in the back, or that his wife didn't sing. No. I'm just glad none of that happened. But I think that Ben Carson, we will never hear from Ben Carson again, I don't think.
Yeah. So his 15 minutes are up.
15 minutes are done. done. We're a little bit done with Ben
Yeah.
Carson. So
Yeah, I don't
Although
know.
Lucifer might run for office
Right.
next. I mean, if Donald
well,
Trump
they
doesn't
still
win,
think
you know?
still Lucifer is running right now.
Well, we'll have to see, and we're just about out of time here. So I want to thank the panel, Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard, Scott Moore at SMan80, and Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. We will be back tomorrow night to talk about night 3 of the convention. We're going to do 3 shows each of these 2 weeks, Tuesday through Thursday. Let's really hope that nothing crazy happens on night 1 of the Democratic convention. I feel really confident that it
It's
won't.
Bernie Sanders night, though.
Is it really?
It is Bernie Sanders. We
night?
have to
doing a
do a
show.
show that night.
All right, Chelsea can do the show that night. I'm going to do the tomorrow show that night.
I'll be orange and you black.
And speaking of the show, at Trump Hillary 16, that is our Twitter. Follow us there. Like us on YouTube. Comment, rate us on iTunes. We will see you guys tomorrow night for more Trump versus Hillary.
See ya.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.